Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar. This is the winter quarterly update webinar for the Connecticut Green Bank. It doesn't necessarily feel like winter here, but today is also Groundhog Day, and Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow, so that does mean 6 more weeks of winter. Has been a little bit of an abnormal winter here in Connecticut with higher than average temperatures and more rain than snow, but 6 more weeks of winter nonetheless. So again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Rudy Stirk. I'm the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications at the Green Bank. I'm joined today by a number of my colleagues who I will introduce as we move forward and get to their sections. A couple of housekeeping items first. This webinar is being recorded. We will send out a follow-up email to everyone who registered with the link to that recording. Second, we will have time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. So please enter your questions in the GoToWebinar box throughout the presentation, and we will get to those. You can see the agenda on the screen. We're going to go through an introduction and then go through our different program lines, home solutions, building solutions, and investment solutions, and then get to that Q&A piece at the end. So a quick introduction of the Connecticut Green Bank for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We were created in 2011 through bipartisan legislation. We are a quasi-public agency for the state of Connecticut, and we were the first state-level green bank in the country. Our mission is to confront climate change by increasing and accelerating investment into Connecticut's green economy to create a more resilient, healthier, and equitable communities for everyone. Guiding this mission is our vision of a planet protected by the love of humanity. So since 2011, the Green Bank's focus has been on clean energy, which does include renewable energy and energy efficiency. In June of 2021, the Green Bank's model was extended as a result of bipartisan legislation and now encompasses environmental infrastructure. This covers a diverse sector of things like land conservation, parks and recreation, carbon offsets, water, waste, and recycling. We're in the process of building out how the Green Bank will work in those environmental infrastructure areas. The support for the Green Bank comes from various sources, including a 1/10 of a penny per kilowatt surcharge on ratepayer bills. We often access federal funds such as ERA funds. There's potential, obviously, for federal money coming from the Inflation Reduction Act. We also issue our own green bonds where individual investors can support the Green Bank. We'll talk about those a little bit later on in this presentation. The important thing is what can be done with all of those funds that are coming into the Green Bank. Since our inception, we've helped mobilize more than $2 billion of investment into the state's green economy. To do this, we leverage that public dollar amount and attract multiples of private investment, roughly at a 7-to-1 ratio, which means for every public dollar the Green Bank gets, we bring in 7 private dollars through our partners with various organizations, and then put those out through our programs, through our solution lines that you see on the screen here for homes, buildings, investments, and community. Through these solution lines, we've been able to help reduce the energy burden on more than 65,000 families and businesses in Connecticut. We've also helped support the creation of more than 26,000 direct, indirect, and induced job years, and have deployed renewable energy and energy efficiency measures that support environmental and equity goals. As a quasi-public agency, we do believe in planning, reporting, transparency. You can find documents like our comprehensive plans and our annual reports on our website. You can see the link on the screen there. Check those out. There's lots of information there. I'd also like to take a moment to talk about the photos on this slide, which go back to our vision statement and the concept that green, the environment, our earth, bonds us together as humans. The top photo is Green Bank President and CEO Brian Garcia at the dedication of a Habitat for Humanity home in Hartford. He's holding the son of the family that was moving into this very energy efficient solar home, a beautiful, clean, safe environment for this family where their energy bills will be affordable and they can raise their family. The bottom photo is a photo that we show often. It's a photo of Prince Street in Bridgeport. It depicts 4 solar homes in that neighborhood right in a row. The first home over to the right was the first one to adopt solar. His name was Melvin. He was a retired engineer who went solar in 2015, and his neighbors soon followed. And because Melvin was such a great solar ambassador, he went around telling people how much he was saving on his energy costs, and helped spread solar through the neighborhood. Melvin passed away recently last month, but you can see part of his legacy is going to continue to remain on the homes of his neighbors who are continuing to save on their energy costs. So I've mentioned our website already as a site of resources for all of our programs. We recently launched a new version of this website on January 9th to align better with our solution lines, to talk about our products and programs in a way that will hopefully help improve the user experience so people can navigate the website and understand what options and opportunities we provide. We are continuing to make improvements to the website for the rest of the year and beyond. So if there are updates or if there are things that you see on our website that you think could be improved, please always feel free to reach out to us. The launch of this new website means also some of our other external websites have merged into the Greenbank website. So GoSolarCT.com, which for a long time was the website for the Residential Solar Investment Program, RSIP, is now been merged into the Greenbank site since that program has ended. CPACE.com has also merged with the Greenbank website. So now when you go to CPACE.com, you will be brought back to the Greenbank website. So if there are other updates that folks would like to see, please let us know on the website. With that, I would like to turn this over to Sarah Harari, Associate Director of Innovation and Senior Advisor to the President and CEO. Sarah is going to provide an update on the work of the Hydrogen Task Force.
Thank you, Rudy. So as Brian Garcia presented at our last quarterly webinar, the Greenbank has been directed by our state legislature to convene a task force around hydrogen power and to look at what are the first steps we need to take as a state to consider the impacts that the new federal funding is going to have here in Connecticut. So we just concluded the work of the task force. The members of the task force were identified by our legislature, and we had just excellent engagement from a lot of really experienced people, from our fellow state agencies to members of the hydrogen electrolyzer industry, to UConn, to our environmental nonprofits and ratepayer advocates. It's just been great to have everybody in the room to talk about what we do, what we want to do on hydrogen in the state. And we're thinking about what happens in hydrogen for hydrogen here in Connecticut, but this is taking place at the same time as a lot of other excitement is happening around hydrogen in the national sphere. In the IIJA, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and also in the Inflation Reduction Act, which I'll be touching on a little bit later, the federal government has allocated a substantial amount of funding to supporting the deployment of hydrogen, with the idea that as we look forward to decarbonizing our economy, there's going to be some parts of our economy that we can't necessarily electrify. And green hydrogen, clean hydrogen is a potential fuel source to help us switch some of our current fossil fuel use over to an alternative green power source that is not necessarily electricity. And so there is a regional hydrogen hub that the state of Connecticut is participating in, that is all of the Northeast states, including some of the Mid-Atlantic. And our sister agency, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, is leading on that. They are also in the midst of developing an update on the comprehensive energy strategies, which will include a definition of clean hydrogen and a policy roadmap for where the state's going to go. The Green Bank's big focus in hydrogen was really on what's the economic development opportunity for the state here. We happen to be one of the leading fuel cell and electrolyzer manufacturing hubs in the country. In fact, as we were going through this task force process and going around the state to meet different members of the Connecticut hydrogen economy, we learned that one of the first fuel cells that was part of one of the original space missions was manufactured right here in Connecticut, and that facility is still making fuel cells today over at High Axiom in Doosan. So, how do we take this position of strength and our expertise in Connecticut and really leverage our manufacturing expertise to turn this into a win for the whole state, to help us decarbonize, to help us move forward, and to help support the workforce and job transition that we want to see. So if you could go to the next slide, Rudy. I also just wanted to quickly touch on the next steps. So as I mentioned, that the task force wrapped up in the beginning of January. We sent a report on to the Energy and Technology Committee at the legislature, and we'll be presenting there next week, and along with other members of the task force, UConn, our fellow agencies, industry representatives, and from there we'll be taking the recommendations that were generated from the task force and putting them into a committee bill for the Energy and Technology Committee to consider taking up. And if you are interested in learning more about what the task force did and reading some of the materials that we generated, including our final report, which has a very short and nice executive summary around what is hydrogen, why are we thinking about it as a state, and what do we want to do, you can find them all right on our new website at the Hydrogen Task Force page. So with that, I'll turn it back to you. Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, now we're going to turn it over to Ed Kranich, who is the Senior Manager of Incentive Programs, so he can talk to us a bit about the Energy Storage Solutions Program. Ed?
Thanks, Rudy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to talk about energy storage solutions for homes, and then a little bit later in the presentation, in the building solutions section, I'll talk a little bit about the differences for commercial properties. So some of what I'm going to say now is mainly geared towards homeowners, but some of it will apply, namely the incentive structure to commercial property owners. So as our climate changes and weather events, extreme weather events become more extreme, the threat of outages is on many homeowners' minds today. So when homeowners install a smart battery alongside solar PV, they can have the security of a backup generator, but in a clean, silent, and safe form factor that fits neatly in the garage or basement. So no fuel tanks, no gas plumbing, no noise, and no harmful emissions, just clean power when you need it, supplied from solar panels on your rooftop. Next slide, please. So Energy Storage Solutions was born out of PURA's framework for an equitable modern grid, docket 171203 for those in the know. The program is administered jointly by the Connecticut Green Bank, Eversource, and UI, and is overseen by PURA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority of Connecticut. The program aims to benefit all ratepayers by dispatching the energy from enrolled batteries to smooth out demand peaks on the grid on hot summer days and even on cold winter days. In fact, even though, as Rudy said, opening here today hasn't really felt too much like winter, I'm sure as many of us know, we're getting a pretty strong cold snap this weekend. So we're actually looking to do an active dispatch of the enrolled batteries in this program on Saturday, when wind chills are expected to get down to 20 below zero. So on days such as these, where the grid electricity demand is very high, but there's no threat of a power outage from a storm, the utilities will remotely dispatch the energy from participating batteries to avoid purchasing electricity from expensive and dirty peaker power plants. So as some of you may know, as demand on the grid gets higher and higher, and it's more and more constrained, that's when the more expensive and the more dirty, say oil-fired power plants have to turn on, and that increases costs for everyone. So battery owners in this program are paid for the energy that's dispatched from their batteries during these events, and customers can receive both an upfront and a performance incentive for their participation. Next slide, please. So how the incentives will work, how they do work, is that, so there's two incentives. There's an upfront and performance-based incentive, as I stated. So the upfront incentive is a cost reduction based on the battery size. So for example, for a standard residential customer, that's $200 per kilowatt hour, and an average size is about 20 kilowatt hours. So it's about $4,000 of an upfront incentive off the cost of a battery. And that's ignoring whether it's tied to PV or not. In most cases, a residential customer will install with solar panels. And that doesn't include the additional benefits that you can get from the Inflation Reduction Act, the increased tax credit, which starts at 30%. So there are additional adders in this program for underserved communities, for low-income customers, and for grid edge customers. So if you fall into one of those categories, say underserved being someone in a DECD designated distressed municipality, which is an annual list that changes. If you're low income and you qualify for certain income eligible programs in Connecticut, or if you're grid edge, which we have a map which shows customers who experience greater frequency of power outages or longer power outages when they happen, there are additional adders to make battery storage more attractive to you. So customers, in exchange for this upfront incentive, will participate in what's called passive dispatch, which is where your battery is pre-programmed to discharge and send power off to the grid on all non-holiday weekdays in the summertime, June through August, for 10 years. So in addition to that, there are seasonal payments, which are based on these more infrequent active dispatch events. So like I stated, this Saturday, very cold day, is going to be one. And throughout the summer, on the very hot days where everyone's inside and the air conditioning's on full blast, those days as well. So seasonal payments will be paid based on how often a customer participates in these events when they're called. So we expect about 30 to 50 or 60 events in the summertime on the very hot days, and maybe 1 to 5 in the wintertime. So these active events are averaged out for each customer, and we calculate an incentive which is paid based on their average amount of power provided during these events in the season. So we have calculators online that can help you kind of determine an estimate of what you'll see for rebates in this program. But we recommend reaching out to contractors to get an idea of what battery storage will can do for you in energy storage solutions. And just an additional note here that anytime that there's a planned dispatch, if there's a major storm event observed by the utilities, they would cancel any events to make sure that customers can have enough backup reserve in their batteries, so they're not fully discharged before something like a big storm that can result in an outage. Next slide, please. So how to get started. So first step would be to visit energystoragect.com. You can learn about storage, and for homeowners, actually on that first page, you'll see a link to about a minute-long video, which explains probably a little more creatively, a little more simply what I've discussed in these slides here. And we have a list of eligible equipment, so you can find a battery that is compatible with your PV system or one from a brand you're familiar with. you can find incentives, and most importantly, you can find a contractor to get started. So that's all I have for energy storage solutions for now. I'll talk a little bit about the commercial side of things in a couple slides from now, but I'll turn it back over to Rudy.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, I saw a couple of questions come through about energy storage solutions. We'll talk about some of those things at the end, but just so we can get through all of the content here, I did want to bring up the Smarty loan, which is, you know, anytime we talk about home solutions, the Smarty loan is the first thing in the list for people, because it does provide financing for more than 40 different home improvement projects for your home. This program would not be possible without our partnership, long-term partnerships with local lenders such as credit unions and local banks, and a vetted contractor network. There are, you know, hundreds of contractors who participate in this program to help provide that service to homeowners. The program has flexible terms. Rates right now are between 4.99% and 6.99%. So, you know, reasonable, low interest financing with no prepayment penalties, no down payment requirements. We always love to share success stories from homeowners who've been able to use the Smarty loan to make their homes more comfortable and to make their energy costs a little bit more under control. And so here are two stories that we featured in our most recent annual report. On the left is Astrid, who purchased a co-op unit in January 2020, right before the pandemic started. And the co-op had the original 100-year-old windows. Due to the pandemic, her family was spending more time at home, so replacing the windows became a higher priority. Thankfully for Astrid, she came across the Smarty loan, which allowed her to replace all 13 windows and upgrade her dryer to a more energy efficient one. You can see Astrid in the picture in front of one of the windows in the new dryer, and her cat, who seems to be liking the fact that the windows can now open up. On the right, we have a homeowner named Mike who said that he couldn't imagine an easier process to obtain a Smarty loan to get new heat pumps and replace his old air conditioners. He really loved the energy efficiency of the new models, and the low interest payments were an attractive feature for him. So we're going to transition now from the home side of things over to the building solutions side of Green Bank. Through building solutions, we offer opportunities for businesses, nonprofits, multifamily properties, and local governments to save money, reduce their environmental impact, and create better spaces for all who frequent those properties. Today, we're going to focus on our Solar Map program, and I'm going to turn it over now to Emily Basham, Associate Director of Financing Programs, to share more.
Thanks, Rudy. Glad to be with you guys. Today I'm going to talk about our Solar Marketplace Assistance Program. This program is available to our state government colleagues and our town and city government counterparts. And this program is it's really a turnkey program that provides no-cost technical assistance to find and fund solar projects. We provide support from beginning to end and every step in between, with the goal of making it easier to adopt clean energy and capture the energy saving benefits. Today, I'll focus on our program offering for towns and cities, and we refer to that program offering by its nickname, Solar Map. Solar Map is for towns that are inexperienced with solar. We are fortunate to live in a state that has a robust clean energy market with many qualified companies that towns can work with. So we focus our Green Bank resources on towns and cities that need a little more support jumping into the clean energy space. Next slide, please. So this is an outline of the program steps for our towns. We begin with a comprehensive assessment on all municipal properties, including schools, to identify where the best opportunities are for solar projects. Then the town selects the sites that they're really interested in, and we will do site feasibility and design. So we'll conduct site visits, we'll look at the electricity needs, we'll develop initial system designs, and then we secure the utility incentives that are available in Connecticut that help us deliver the energy cost savings. Once we have incentives in hand, we will solicit proposals from our robust network of qualified solar contractors, and we will select the best proposal. And towns that are participating in the program around the same time frame are grouped together into the same solicitation. So by aggregating those towns' projects together, we're able to achieve some economies of scale and offer a more attractive group of projects to our contractor network. And consequently, we receive more competitive pricing, which benefits the overall project economics. So once we've got our incentives in hand and we've got our construction partner selected, we pull together the final project specs and pricing and present that to the town, and they'll select the projects and execute an agreement with the town. Then we onboard the contractor and get started on our engineering, design, and construction for the system. Next slide. So this is a relatively recent or newer program of the Green Bank. So we've got a couple rounds of cities and towns that we've worked with, and wanted to highlight the town of Manchester, who participated in our first round of the Solar Map program. Manchester did 7 solar PV projects in town, which are almost all fully energized. These 7 projects total to 2.4 megawatts that were installed by a local contractor. Again, there's no upfront costs for participating in the program and getting the technical assistance, but also with the financing. All of these projects were financed with the Green Bank's Power Purchase Agreement, which has no upfront costs. And the 7 systems that were installed across the town included the town's water and sewer building, as well as should be 6 Board of Education schools. And you'll see pictured below 2 of those schools, they're elementary schools. And so across the 7 projects, the solar power will provide about 50% of the building's electricity needs. And on average, we're providing that power, that solar power through the PPA at a cheaper price than grid power, about a third cheaper than grid power. So these 7 projects together will provide $100,000 in energy cost savings annually to the town, and over $2 million over the term to the town. So we're very excited that Manchester really jumped in the deep end, did 7 projects, and they're getting rewarded with some very rich energy savings. We're also very excited to bring the final couple projects online here in the coming month, and looking forward to delivering the same value and clean energy adoption to the other towns that are participating in the program. And if you'd like more information about the program, we have a program page under the Community Solutions section of the Green Bank website, which includes some contact links as well. So that's it for me, and I'll turn it back to you, Rudy.
Thanks, Emily. We're going to hand it over to Ed here so we can talk about the commercial side of energy storage solutions.
All right, thanks, Rudy. I'm back. I spoke earlier about the benefits of energy storage for homes. The benefits of backup, of course, are still valuable for commercial and industrial customers, especially for business continuity in the event of an outage. But commercial customers who pay a monthly demand charge can see even greater benefits with or without solar panels. So with a battery, you can charge from solar PV or from the grid during off-peak hours, and you can use that stored energy during the course of your regular business operations during the day to smooth out the peaks in your daily demand. So think for a large industrial customer, factory, someone who, midday they have all their machines running, that can result in pretty high demand charges. So by charging a battery during off-grid times when power is cheaper, you can take that the peaks and valleys of your demand, and you can smooth that out, which will result in lower monthly energy costs. So this peak demand avoidance can add up to real savings. So the incentive structure for commercial and industrial ESS customers is exactly the same as residential, with just different upfront incentive rates. So those rates can vary depending on whether a customer is small, medium, or large in terms of their annual demand. We have a calculator that will be revised on the website in the next week or so. So the last year, when the program had launched, we saw quite a lot of interest in the program for commercial and industrial customers. So we had a 3-year goal of 50 megawatts of capacity, and we reached that in just a matter of months. So given the high demand and how quickly everything went in the first year, we've decided to open the second 3-year tranche a little bit early, and we're expecting that 100 megawatt tranche to be opened in the middle of March. So we will be announcing that soon, and we are still taking applications in the program. So there's capacity. So anyone who's interested, we recommend you begin either reaching out to a contractor now or reach out to us to try to get an application in the queue as soon as you can. So look for an announcement from the Green Bank soon on the next tranche, the next 100 megawatts of commercial and industrial incentives for ESS. So back to you, Rudy.
Thank you, Ed. Now, to cover our investment solutions and our Green Liberty notes, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, David Beach, who is the Senior Manager on our investments team.
Thanks, Rudy. And thanks all for joining. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today about our Green Liberty notes. So in addition to all of these great initiatives and programs that my colleagues have spoken about, we also want to give Connecticut residents a chance to be a part of these programs and to benefit financially from them. So we've created our Green Liberty notes. These are 1-year fixed interest debt securities. So they kind of function like a CD. You put your money in a year's time, you get your money back with interest. We are really proud of them and want to highlight a couple of the really great benefits. Number one, you can earn an interest rate that is higher than comparable 1-year CDs. So the issuance that we just completed, the interest rate was 4.75%. That's the nice thing about interest rates rising is if you are able to apply those to an investment, you can kind of take advantage of the higher interest rates instead of being hurt by them. And these Green Liberty notes are supported by the Small Business Energy Advantage program, which is another program that the Green Bank is involved in, which helps lower the barrier to entry for small businesses who want to lower their energy burden. So there are some upfront incentives in that program, and businesses are able to pay the loans back at 0% interest, and they're able to pay that directly on their utility bill. And it's these loans that the Green Bank purchases at a discount that are used to support the Green Liberty notes. And we really structure these so that our investors can have confidence that you get paid back. and confidence that you're supporting a green investment. So we went out to Kestrel verifiers who did a second party opinion to show that these are indeed, they meet the framework and can be designated as green bonds. So we wanted to provide not only, repayment certainty for our investors, but also that green benefit certainty. Rudy, you can go ahead to the next slide. So as I said, the most recent issuance just closed. And the reason, why we had this webinar or part of it at this time was we thought we'd be in the middle of our raise. It was supposed to end on February 9th, but here we are more than a week ahead of time, and we have sold out. We received more than $365,000 in investment when our top target was $250,000. So what we do from there is, first off, we are committed to protecting the people who we created this investment for. So that means we are protecting folks who have invested with us in the past and are reinvesting. We're protecting people who are from the state of Connecticut and invested $1,000 or less, and then people across the country who have invested $1,000 or less. Because our goal here was really to democratize investing. So while we're welcome to everyone who wants to invest, we're going to make sure that this is open to people who may not be able to traditionally buy a green bond, because those are often sold at $10,000 a piece, or if you're lucky, $1,000 a piece, but you still need a broker. Our Green Liberty notes you can purchase online for just $100. So like I said, we are sold out, but we are going back to the market. We do these every 3 months. So there's 4 issuances a year. And the next one's going to come in early April. So if you'd like to be ready for the next Green Liberty notes when they come out, you can go to greenlibertynotes.com. You'll see this page that is shown here on the presentation. And where those arrows are pointing, it says, please sign up here. You can click that link and fill out your name and email. And that way you'll be notified when the next issuance comes out, so you can get involved, get your investment in early, and make sure you can take part in this really great opportunity. And I think Rudy is going to try and drop that link in the chat a little bit later as well. So if you're not able to go to greenlibertynotes.com, stick around and look in the chat, because we'll drop that link there as well. And yeah, really hope you are able to hear about this when we come back in April, and we'd love to hear your investment. And with that, I will pass it back to Rudy.
Thank you, David. Yes, I will put that link in the chat in a moment or two. Now I'm going to turn it back to Sarah Harari for some closing thoughts related to some of the federal things that are happening.
Thank you, Rudy. So as I mentioned in my first section on hydrogen, there's a lot that's going on at the federal level right now that we're trying to wrap our hands around. There's a lot of funding through a couple of different programs. And for each of those programs, our team here at the Green Bank is taking the time to look at all of the different funding opportunities and to sort through which ones are the best fit for us to go after. So the first one is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This is the package that came out last year, and it has 4 priority areas: delivering clean power, clean energy demonstrations, energy efficiency and weatherization retrofits, and clean energy manufacturing and workforce development. And so for each of these priority areas, there is tens of programs that provide funding. Some of them are formula based, so it looks at the number of people in the state or the amount of energy that are used in a state and automatically sends money to the state for those. Others are competitive, so it says who has the best idea about how we can achieve emissions reductions using batteries. And we say, oh, hey, we have a battery program. Perhaps that it's a good fit for us to be part of a team that can demonstrate this functionality and build on the knowledge and expertise we have here in the state of Connecticut to attract some federal funding for this program. And so our participation in IIJA so far has been around really 2 areas. The first is around looking for those opportunities like emissions and batteries, where we already have a program that's set up that we can add additional funding from the federal government in to bring in technical assistance. We're working with UConn, we're working with our fellow agencies, we're working with other green banks across the country to say, how can we learn more from the programs that we're doing to make them better, more effective, more cost effective, to ensure that we are really taking the time to confront climate change in all the ways that we can. How do we make sure that, you know, these projects are being deployed equitably? And then how do we take those learnings and use them to improve our programs? And then the second way we are participating in IIJA is that the Green Bank is a leading voice in thinking about how we deploy clean energy technology equitably. From our expertise working in the rooftop solar industry, we are frequently requested to provide public comment into some of these programs that are thinking about how can you creatively work with low income, underserved, and vulnerable communities, and how do we make this a transition that everybody can participate in and benefit from. And so we are providing our expertise and highlighting the excellent work that Connecticut has done to become a solar with justice state, and trying to create a roadmap that other states that are interested in pursuing this to follow. The second different federal package that's up right now is the Inflation Reduction Act. That's the second one here. If you're interested in learning more about either of these, I included links on these slides to the summaries for both of these federal packages. But the IRA, or the Inflation Reduction Act, I personally call it IRA. I think it sounds a little bit more friendly and less like it's tax season. So under the IRA, there's really two different big topics that the Green Bank has been focused on. The first is that a lot of the tax credits that have been used to support the deployment of clean energy technology, like rooftop solar and batteries, are in the IRA. They're extended, they're changed. There's different adders within those. So now if in the future, if batteries are built in the US or have if a commercial installation has an associated apprenticeship program that provides workforce development, all of those are starting to change in positive ways, but in ways that we need to pay attention to because it really impacts the financing packages that we can offer in some exciting ways. So we've been paying attention to the tax credits and how those are changing. We think that there's some exciting things to come in the future here. Perhaps if we have any questions, David Beach can answer them because he's been paying close attention to it. And then the second area of real interest for the Green Bank in the IRA is that the IRA established a greenhouse gas reduction fund. This is a $27 billion national climate bank. It basically recognizes the good work that green banks across the country have been doing to leverage public capital to attract private capital into the market. And through all of the programs that you've heard us talk about throughout this webinar, we really can accelerate the deployment of clean energy and energy efficiency technologies by using this model. So this establishes a national climate bank to start to do that on a broader scale and to provide funding and support to all of the state level and local level green banks that are doing this work now. So if you could move to the next slide. So just wanted to share some examples of how we're participating in these two different omnibus funding packages from the federal government, and invite you to go along with us on this ride. So on the right here, you'll see we've, as part of our new website that Rudy just mentioned, we put a place where you can see everywhere that we are commenting in. You can read our comments on the different programs. You can read the ideas that we have around what do we want to pilot, what are we demonstrating, how is this going to help scale up the solutions. And then here on the left is an example of one of the projects. So this is one that we're very excited about that we're going in on with Hawaii and Puerto Rico. The idea being that we are all relatively small geographic areas that have ambitious clean policy targets. And we all have research institutions like UConn that can help us think about how do we take the programs we already have and do more with them, especially for our most vulnerable communities. So creating some space where we can learn from others, and attract public funding to Connecticut to do some of that work. So it's all good news on the federal side. It's an exciting time to be working in the clean energy space because there is so much excitement and attention and funding being paid to not only how do we do these programs, but how do we do them better? How do we take the next step on making sure that this technology is doing everything it can do and that it's going to everybody and not just those who are the first adopters. So happy to take any questions about it, but with that, I'll pass back to Rudy.
Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, so now is the point in our show where we open it up for questions, and we've already gotten more questions than we'll be able to cover in the next 10 minutes. So I'll apologize in advance if we don't get to your question, but you can always email us at the address that's shown on the screen. We'll do our best to cover a lot of these questions now. If we don't answer your question now, I'll try to reach out to you with an answer too. So we close the loop on all these things. So first, I think we're going to jump back to battery topics, Ed, because there were a number of battery topics. Since it's still a new program, there's still a lot of questions about the technology and all the things related to it. So the first question I think we should talk about is, how much does a battery for a home generally cost? What kind of insight can you offer there?
That's a great question. So we've seen prices kind of in a range, and not to shock anyone, but prices have actually come up a little bit, just because of mainly because of scarcity, and in some cases labor costs. But customers often pair it with solar PV, so that can help kind of benefit from some bundling of costs. But a battery adding to a battery adding to your PV system can add anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 in total cost. So again, there are the upfront incentives, there are adders. Residential incentives can go up to $7,500, and there's also a 30% federal tax credit.
Thanks, Ed. Does it matter at all if the homeowner has an EV charger already, or is there any other kind of existing technology concerns or panel things that they need to be thinking about?
So it doesn't make things much different to have say something like an EV charger. One thing that you would want to go over with your contractor is the essential loads in your home. So if all of the loads in your home are on one service panel, like in most homes, you may want to consider installing a critical loads panel, or in some cases you may even have to upgrade your service if you only have say a 100 amp service in your home. There are actually some provisions in IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that provide some tax credits for upgrading your service to help electrify your home. But yes, often if you're installing solar panels, you would have to upgrade your service. And if you're installing a battery, you'll want to isolate some of your critical loads so that only those loads are powered in the event of an outage when you're working off of battery power.
Excellent. Thank you, Ed. So there are a couple of questions tied to the low income side of the incentive program. Does the owner of the battery need to be low income, or do the recipients of the battery need to be in underserved communities? I think the answer there is they don't have to be. The program is available to everyone. There are increased incentives. Could you just go over those a little bit again?
Right, thanks. So the standard rate is $200 per kilowatt hour of capacity. But like I said, there's an adder. So if you live in an underserved community, that rate increases to $300. And the underserved communities, I think there's about 27 of them. We do have a link to the list on our website on energystoragect.com. You would go to the contractor materials page, and there's a list of the current underserved communities. For low-income customers, that's anyone with a that's 60% or below state median income. That's state median income, not area. And that rate increases to $400 per kilowatt hour. And then for grid edge, they are far and wide across Connecticut, so it's really going to depend even on the street level. So finding out whether you're grid edge, again, we have maps on our website where you can find if you are a grid edge customer, or if you're on a grid edge circuit in your town. But that would increase your incentive by up to 50%, for a total of up to $7,500 per project.
Excellent, Ed. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions here that I think Emily would probably be the right person to ask these to. As far as the Manchester solar that you talked about, did they place their panels on existing buildings, or was this new buildings or renovation? Give a little bit more insight on how they picked the projects.
Yeah, so it was a mixture. They've got a couple of newer schools in the Manchester School District. So a couple of them were newer facilities, but they were existing. All of the buildings were already existing. And then two of the schools actually had previous installations that were already installed in previous years. Not through this program, but they had additional electricity usage that they needed to offset. So there was both the demand that was still there at the school and space on the rooftop to add a second system. So that was a couple of the schools, but they were all existing. Yep.
Okay. There's a question about solar on canopies, say over a parking lot at a school. The asker says something to the effect of the town is worried that the rooftop solar would negate the roof warranty, and there's concerns from fire marshals, things like that. So could solar rooftop be exchanged for solar canopy?
The short answer is yes. Typically, we're looking at a rooftop as sort of the first option that we look at, because it is sort of has the best economics since you're constructing on an existing building. And part of the process for the installation is actually coordinating with the warranty holder at each site to understand how we can maintain the warranty that's in place. So just a note there. But if you're not interested or the roof isn't feasible, you can certainly look at a carport installation. Those are going to be a little bit more expensive projects because you've got to, build the structure that the panels go on top of. But it's definitely an option I know is very popular lately. So that's definitely an option.
Great. Thank you, Emily. There are a couple of questions about Smarty, so I'll sort of bulk those all together here. Smarty does provide financing for solar PV systems for your home. The loans offer terms from 5 years up to 15 and 20-year terms. The rates on those 20-year terms for the lenders that are, not all the lenders will go to 15 and 20 years, but the ones that do are doing it at a 6.99% rate currently. You would have to essentially get approved with those lenders for the loan. They do have limits on how much. I believe it's 40,000 is the maximum loan amount for any of the Smarty loans. And those are offered through a network of local lenders. You can see all of them on our website. It includes a couple of credit unions, a couple of local banks. They're all headquartered here in Connecticut, and a CDFI, a community development financial institution called Capital for Change. So all local, they're all our partners. The loans are actually through them, so you would apply directly through them. Let me see, what other questions are on here? Sarah, there was a question before we close here. There was a question about hydrogen. Can hydrogen be used to generate large-scale electricity?
Yes, that is certainly contemplated in the report that the task force generated. You can burn hydrogen. However, I think that that's probably not a primary use case for Connecticut. You know, it could be potentially, when we talk about burning hydrogen, what we often are thinking about is using hydrogen as a seasonal storage technology. That means that when there's extra solar in the summer or wind blowing offshore, perhaps we use that excess electricity that we might not need and use that to produce green hydrogen. And then in the times where there is not as much renewables being generated at any given time, you could then burn that hydrogen to produce electricity to continue to electrify the sector. However, we have a lot of different kinds of storage technology, so remains to be seen as DEEP develops their hydrogen roadmap if that's a primary use case for Connecticut, or you know, if we would prefer to use that hydrogen for other applications, like creating a fleet of, you know, long range shipping trucks that run on diesel and run on hydrogen instead of on diesel. So lots to be done in the hydrogen space to figure out what the best use cases are.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. I think we are just a little bit over time right now, and any of the questions that we didn't get to, as I said, we will send you follow-up emails. The webinar recording will be sent out in a couple of days. Again, if you have any questions or need any further information, always feel free to reach out to us at the website via the email above or through our Green Bank website. So thank you all very much for your time today. Take care and stay warm this weekend.